Can you see that okay now?
Now we see it, yes.
Excellent. Okay, cool. So we're amongst friends. So there's 23 of us who all live and breathe this world. It's lovely to be here. Thank you very much for the time. So I'm Andrew North. I'm one of the directors at KTSL. Like Chris and the team at Fusion, we're one of the other elite partners, and we've been spending a lot of many years focusing on the BMC world. So just by way of very quick orientation, more than anything, in terms of kind of where we come from, it's very much. Obviously, we had Chris really good presentation on kind of the tooling and some of the amazing things that the Fusion team have been able to do. We're going to move a little bit more into the kind of the process conversation and have a little bit of a chat about some of the pragmatic things we get asked for, and we're going to talk a little bit more about CMDB side of things today. Our background is really as a service integrator. So we've spent most of the last 10, 15, 20 years trying to plug things in. So that's really our bag. A lot of focus around pragmatic, authentic things that we can do every day. We're all in a world where we're trying to do more with what we have, trying to make it better. So that's really what we wanted to have a chat about today. So we work with large scale organizations, a lot of focus on different integrations and actually how we get the best out of the systems, as we all do. We've all got very complex day jobs, sorts of things that we get involved with around transformation, workflow, platform management, and a lot of work around employee experience. And I think that's where we're really coming from today. So from our perspective, it's about taking the process mapping, the integration conversations, the portal conversations around things that we're doing to add around whether it's DWPA or those sorts of conversations, then analytics, insights, and trend management. So day to day, the things that we're looking at, and today's focus very much on CMDB. So moving from the tooling more to the process, as I mentioned earlier on. So I'm the face of us today. The next piece I'm going to do is something that Aaron got ready for us because he knew that he might get called onto a plane an hour earlier. So hopefully you can see this as well. And I'm going to crack on with his little presentation.
Hello. So what we're going to talk about today is how you can improve your CMDB maturity in simple bite-sized chunks. And what we're going to cover is we're going to look at an approach to how you can simplify the delivery of a CMDB and drive outcomes in both the short, medium and longer term. We're going to look at some principles then about how we can break down everything we do inside the CMDB into 3 simple ideas, which allows us to make sure we keep stakeholder engagement. And that's where we're going to look at the key areas of the CMDB that those stakeholders are going to be interested in. And that is going to allow us to successfully deliver the outcomes that the business is looking for from our CMDB. So we're going to start by looking at the approach. So how can we simplify the approach that we use? How can we make it measurable? And how can we make sure that the CMDB is delivering what our business and our stakeholders require? To begin with, we're going to start with a very simple recommended approach, and that's a 12-week plan. Now, in some cases, people think 12 weeks is too long for a sprint style methodology, but within a delivery mechanism for the CMDB, you have to be realistic in terms of assigning enough time to achieve something which can genuinely drive value to the business. Within that 12-week plan, the first thing that we would focus on is an audit. So how can we understand how the CMDB is working currently? So we can therefore ascertain where our gaps are, or where maybe we're lacking a level of maturity that we want to try and improve. Or maybe a requirement for the business isn't quite being met, and it's something that we want to look at and close that gap. We then break that down into manageable goals, which is going to define an outcome. So for example, If the security team wants to understand more about our business-facing applications and how they're run and how they're secured, then that will be one focus line within our CMDB. If we want, for example, to understand the mobile estate that we run, maybe a task there will be to look at how we can leverage Intune within our plan. Then we're going to look at how we manage the data within the CMDB. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the three main principles of provider, maintain, and consume. And we'll talk about how they work in tandem to deliver the outcome we want. But we need to focus on the data within our 12-week plan because that's going to drive the usability of our CMDB. We then want to make sure that we have a focus on the end-to-end. We want to make sure that the people that are consuming our data within the CMDB understand what we're trying to do, and that we have a robust strategy to maintain that data and make sure that it's evergreen and always accurate. We then need to assign the tasks and resources to achieve those goals to the right people within our organization. And then we need to leverage existing technology where possible. We want to make this a quick, simple plan. So where we have technology that we can reuse, that's what we should do. Where we don't, maybe we do need to look at replacements because maybe there's a gap there. And what we want to do is to bring that replacement in as part of our plan. But we should look at where our source of that data begins. Once we've looked at our planning, the next thing is to look at our key drivers. So are we looking at improving the depth and breadth of our CMDB? So do we want to look at our structure and our classes? Do we want to look at what data we bring into the CMDB? Because we only want to bring in the right data. We only want to bring in attributes that are useful from an IT service management perspective. So for example, if we're bringing data in from VMware, we don't need to understand every single failover instance or CPU allocation or virtual CPU. What we need to understand is how it affects the relationship structure between the service CIs and our business and how they are maintained and run. And that's what's key. We need to make sure we can drive change, drive incident, drive proactive problem management from that data. But where we need more detail, we should federate to the source to go and get it. We then want to look at what gaps do we have now. So what gaps are we trying to close within our CMDB? And do we have the right data to close those? And then might want to look at an impact and support analysis. So how do we prove our impact modeling? How do we drive risk out of change? How do we give the business the information they want to be able to proactively assess that and or understand when an issue happens, what the risk is to the business? And how do we drive better proactive management using CMDB? So therefore, I can drive more automation. I understand that a request is linked to part of my environment, and I could drive a piece of automation to solve a problem or improve my request management by bringing in that automation. And then finally, we might want to look at, do we drive events successfully? So when an event comes in, do we route it immediately to the right team? Do we use the automation that we might have to go and fix that problem before it happens? So again, maybe we have a peak time within our business where we need to spin up additional capacity. Do we trigger that from an event? Do we use that proactively based on what our CMDB is telling us? We then need to look at what success looks like. So what are the initial success criteria for our team? And how would we phase that project to make sure that our stakeholders are kept constantly informed and therefore are willing to support, fund, and increase the project for the CMDB itself? Now let's look at some principles around the CMDB. We break it down into three very key sections. So firstly, we have our consumers. Because without consumers, there's no need for a CMDB. They want the data that you're storing. So whether that's through reports, through data extracts, or through analysis, or through a process such as incident management, such as request management, such as even control and cost. They're the consumers of our data. And if they can't find a use for it, then we can't drive change and maturity within CMDB. There has to be a reason why we want to store that information. We also need to maintain it. So we need to plan for how we're going to use that data. We need to identify it. We need to control it. We may need to account for the status of it, so the asset life cycle that happens within our CIs. And we may need to provide that data for verification and audit. So we may have a security audit that's happening, or we may have an audit for financial reasons taking place. We need to make sure that data that within our CMDB is accurate, because that allows our business to be confident in what we're providing, confident that we can manage our change and manage our risk across our business areas. And we have our providers, because without the data feeding in to be maintained, feeding up to those consumers to use, we can't complete our configuration management process. And that data may come in a variety of sources. It could simply be spreadsheet loads, because maybe we don't have discovery yet. Maybe we've got sources or information that we can't automate. We may also have some element of data source loads. So where we're pulling data through an API from some of our lower level systems like VMware or Hyper-V or containerization. We may also have some discovery tools. So we may be leveraging data that's coming in from BMC Discovery or from another discovery tool that we have deployed within our estate that we're going to aggregate in at our provider level. But all the way through these steps, what we're trying to do is remember what we're trying to provide is an outcome. We're trying to make the CMDB useful for people that want to consume it. Whether that is a C-level executive, somebody sat in support, somebody sat on the service desk, or somebody tried to get a handle on automation or proactive problem management. The CMDB is vital for all of those use cases. And we have to set our providers, the way we maintain it, and what we're trying to do with it at each step of our plan. So let's look at some example activities within those three buckets. And this will vary depending on the maturity curve of your organization and what is important for you as a business. But here's some typical examples. So within the provide space, we might look at a discovery solution to maybe improve the data quality that's going into our CMDB. Maybe we want a standard loading solution, so a standard API call. Maybe we use a middleware platform. We want to standardize on it. We want to make sure that our data is coming through in a consistent way. Or maybe you want to look at additional integration, so Intune or SCCM to improve our data quality. Maybe we want to cover some gaps, so we have a gap within our mobile estate, so we want to automate to our MDM platform. Or maybe we want to look at some sort of generic spreadsheet loader because we don't have the level of maturity yet for automation, so we simply want to get that data in from an external source. So maybe we want to use Atrium Integrator to pull that data in, and we want to start our process off of the provide area within that goal. Then we need to maintain our data. So we're looking at data quality, duplicates, orphans, stale CIs, because we want our data to be accurate. If we're assessing change risk, our data needs to be up to date. We want our maintenance dashboards to report. So if we say, for example, had a failed scan, or we knew that our sweep wasn't catching 100% of the information, how do we manage that? We might want to improve our service and application maps. So for example, we want to identify a business process. Well, how is that delivered down to service level, application level, and infrastructure level? We might want to improve our data dictionary, provide our consumers a map for using our data and consuming the data that we provide. We might want to review our normalization. So we might want standardization in terms of our naming conventions from our multiple sources. We want to make sure that that aligns with the names that our end users are familiar with. Or maybe we simply want to make sure we archive that data to maintain control over the size of the CMDB. And finally, we want to look at consumption. So do we want to simply integrate our CMDB into our processes? So you want to make it a core driver for change service CIs, for incident service CIs or relationships, or how incidents have affected other areas of our business. Maybe we want to use it for capacity planning, or maybe we want to link our request management to our CMDB service catalog. So when someone requests something, we can either automate or understand the impact on our business. We might want to feed that into our information system lifecycle. So security, audit CIs, patch management, application management, DevOps. They may need to fill that feed or use that data from the CMDB. And we might want to make sure we're not holding the business up. The business may be driving towards an agile tribe-based methodology. We want to make sure that our CMDB can help that, not impinge on it. We also need to make sure that we have consumer dashboards. So we're providing accurate data insights. We have our CMDB with the service levels that we require. And we want to make sure that we can extract that data. And maybe we provide an API capability for people to go and mine that data when they need it and how they want to use it. And we may look at how we can manage event management, how we can control what happens when an event comes in. Maybe it automatically notifies the business users that we have an issue at the moment. Or maybe it just simply assigns a ticket to our support team. Well, we need to make sure that there's accuracy in the way that works. And underpinning these activities is our long-term plan. So we're looking at how we maintain our service levels within our CMDB. So data quality, how often we get accurate feeds, how often we accurately assess or call automation within our CMDB. Because often we look at service levels in terms of incident requests. We don't often look at service levels within IT itself, within our maintenance of our CMDB, but that is a service level. The accuracy is a service level, and we should be measured on that. We might want to look at how it informs our change management risk strategy. Maybe we want to reduce time in cab. Maybe we want to understand how changes are assessed for accurate risk. We might want to look at our integration strategy. So how are we providing this data? Does it tie into a middleware platform that maybe we're looking at? Do we want to expose this data through Helix integration platform, for example? Do we want to expose this data to third parties? And then a longer term vision. So we might have several 12-week plans because we might be delivering a longer term goal. But what we want to do is to make sure that each 12 weeks we're delivering an outcome, because then we are more likely to obtain funding from the business in order to continue the project. So let's look at a more detailed example of maintain, and let's look at our data dictionary. So we want to provide a single list of providers to our CMDB classes so people using that data can recognize gaps or understand the impact of those data issues. So we might want to create a baseline of that data model that we can build our requirements against. We want to look at where we can simplify that data model potentially. And then we want a really clear document for how the consumers use it. Almost like a tube map or a subway map to say, you want this data, this is where it is, and this is how you go to get it. Because that makes our CMDB accessible. And let's look at an example in the consumer space. So here, I might want to identify and update the self-service catalog items to use my CMDB data to leverage automation. Or maybe I simply just want consistency over service reporting. But again, a good example of this is maybe I want to spin up a new VM. I want it in a certain domain structure, and I want it to have a certain level of security. So I raise a request for that. It looks up the way that I've modeled that VMware within my CMDB. It executes a piece of automation based on that model that's selected. And then that VM is automatically provisioned. And why are we doing this? Because we want to reduce the manual effort for employees logging requests. We want to improve the accuracy for the fulfilling teams or that automation. So back to my example of virtual service spin up, I need my CMDB to be accurate so I can do that. Or if I can't do it through automation, I might want to make sure it gets to the right person because that saves time. So let's have a look at a typical 12-week timeline. So in this example, we're going to look at doing an Intune integration within our first 4 weeks because we've identified that mobile data management is important and our mobile data is being managed through Intune. We have an ongoing step within the first 8 weeks to improve our data quality. So we've got some gaps where we have some duplicate CIs and some orphans that we want to remove and manage. And that's going to flow into a more accurate data dictionary definition that we can provide to our consumers. And then in the consumer space, we want to understand more readily where our events are being sourced from because we have a gap there at the moment. So we're going to focus on that. We want some more request integration. We want to call some automation from our request platform. So we're going to focus on some quick wins there. And then finally, we want to improve our dashboarding. So our stakeholders feel confident that we have a handle on our estate and that what we are reporting is accurate. So we're going to provide some dashboards on top of our CMDB. And then we're going to define how that sits within our overarching vision and what we're trying to ultimately achieve. So now let's move on and look at our approach to the CMDB. And how are we going to keep our stakeholders engaged? For this, we split this into 4 data dimensions. So the first one is the logical CI. So this is our service catalog. This is the way that we explain our business services or business processes or applications to our end users, to our support staff, and to the people that support and maintain our business. And typically, most organizations have started this approach. They may have a certain amount of their service catalog modeled. They may have a certain amount of their service maps defined. But usually, you're starting on that journey, and what you may be doing is expanding it. The next dimension is our physical CIs. These are the most easiest to understand. Physical kit, infrastructure, servers, network, events that run on top of them. But it's a second dimension that we need to flow into our CMDB in order to understand how our structure is formed. The third and fourth dimensions tend to be where businesses are striving to get to, but they may be less mature in these areas. So we want our CMDB to tell us who maintains our environments, who supports them. If you're moving to a more DevOps tribe-based model, then you need this data, because you can't swarm a tribe across a DevOps estate unless you know, based on product or CI or business service, who are the right people to pull into that swarm. So the CMDB is becoming really important in that area to support DevOps. And it's one area where a lot of organizations are lacking maturity at the moment. And the final area is cost modeling. If I want to move my business from on-premise to cloud, or I want to look at different cloud platforms, or I want to look at containerization, I need to understand what I actually pay for my infrastructure now. What does it actually cost me to deliver a service? And there's multiple elements of that. One is the infrastructure that it runs on. One is the people that support it. I might have offshore, onshore. I might take it for a managed service. But I want to understand how much does it cost me to deliver these services. And the CMDB is so important for that. As a CTO, I'd want to provide my CFO the exact cost of different areas of my business. How much does that area of DevOps cost? How much does that forward-facing business application that we provide to our customers cost for us to maintain? So I need that cost modeling element within my CMDB to be able to provide that data. And I may federate to get some of it, but it's still a key data dimension. Let's just break those down in a little bit more detail. So the logical CIs will contain things like the service catalog, business and technical services. How are we linking those to discovery? Do we need to capture anything manually? Because actually we can't use discovery to maintain that link between a business process and a business service. And I'll come on to how AI can help us do that at the end of the presentation. Or do we want to build and maintain our service maps? Because they're based on logical CIs. And how do we link those back to the instance requests and changes that happen with our business, and therefore perform accurate impact modeling? Maybe we just want to understand what testing we need to do when we do a change, because we have an issue at the moment where testing takes too long, it doesn't fit in with our agile approach, so we want to focus our testing down on specific areas. Physical CIs is the easiest to understand. So class structure, the data we want to store, the discovery sources, reconciliation across multiple data sources that we may have, using federation where it makes sense, and then leveraging our capability in this area to maintain those physical CIs once we've got them in. Events should also go into this section because actually they are driving a result based on what's within our CMDB structure. Dimension 3, well, that's as we spoke about before, but our support groups to manage our logical and physical CIs. Do we have the data for that? Where's that stored? How do we manage our outsources? Do we have penalty clauses with them? How do we link that to approval? So if I'm requesting something or a change, my user and support mapping should tell me who needs to approve it based on who maintains it, supports it, uses it, or runs it. And that data is within the CMDB. Do we use some automation to alert those people? Do we alert our customers? Do we automatically state when things are going to be unavailable? And do we make that persona driven? So I only see the things that I'm interested in, or that I consume, or support, or maintain. And that data is really important to hold and store within our CMDB structure. And finally, our fourth dimension, one of the cost modelling. So do we track our supplier costs and our contracts? How much do we pay for this application? How much do we pay for maintenance? Do we track our staff costs? How much is it maintained to run this application? If we're again moving to a more agile DevOps tribe-based approach, do we have skills in this area that we can use across multiple products? What are our infrastructure costs? Our contracts, our cost to maintain, our cloud services? Do we have underpinning service levels or penalties or reviews with these suppliers? Do we manage that? What do they look like? What's our uptime rating? And then do we have the data to maintain our cost modeling? Do we need to maybe bring in that data from a cost control tool? Do we need to go to an Actio or LeanIX to get that data? But we want to have the ability to do that cost modeling. And why? It's because they're critical reports for our C-level executives to run their business. And that's why this is an important outcome of any CMDB plan. So finally, I want to touch on how we can use AI to do some of this heavy lifting. One of the key use cases of the CMDB is to enable continuous service improvement. And that's one of the things that businesses are focusing on. So the best incident is one that never happens, okay? Because I've already solved the problem before it occurs. And I want to know, how do I prioritize my time and my resources so I can identify what problems are critical to the business? Now, as a human, we can read tickets and we have a good understanding of what's happening within our business. But we can't read a million tickets. We can't look at multiple data points within our business and try to make sense of them. AI can. It can do that and provide us a report where we can then use our specific human knowledge to actually make a difference and to work out where I should prioritize that time. But I'm going to let AI read the tickets for me. I'm going to let it read the work logs, the descriptions. I'm going to let it find the CIs and the issue that occurred. And what I'm going to use is the report that it provides me. And what that gives me is an understanding of my data. Because I may think I know what's happening, but I may be missing some low-hanging fruit that I could go after to improve my automation strategy. I might want to join the dots across multiple data sources. And I can use AI to help me do that. And that allows me to decide what I want to do. And it gives me confidence that what I think is happening is right. And I'm going to use some unbiased data to show that. And that's going to help me get stakeholder funding because I'm going to have multiple points that I can prove that's what's happening within the business is genuinely happening. And it allows me to move from we think that to we know that. And AI is so valuable in order to help businesses do that, but also then help feed that information into the CMDB. And that leads me on to CI creation. So we can use AI to provide CI heat maps. So it can analyze our data and provide our key CIs within our business and what happens on them. So maybe we're going to use it to look at incident and change correlation. So when we get an incident spike based on a change, but what was the issue? Not just that it spiked, but let's read the work log, read the resolution text, read the descriptions, and find out what actually happened. Because maybe every time we get a change, it's the same things that are being called up about. So maybe, for example, we do a change to a particular system, we move reports, and end users keep calling up to say, oh, my reports have moved again, I can't find them. Well, that's a simple thing to solve. You just bed that into the change process, where one task is to make sure you update your user documentation around reporting. We can also check, do we have it? So we can use AI to drive finding CIs, maybe even to a business process level, because it will understand what the end user was trying to do. And we can check that and maybe replicate it back into our golden data set. We might make AI replicate into a sub data set first, because we want to understand that what it's reporting on is accurate. And we might want a level of human guidance on top of it. but it can provide us a huge amount of data that we can feed into our CMDB. And if it doesn't exist, we can let AI create it. Obviously, best practice is to write to a replication data set, but then you can use that data across your CMDB structure. And it could also allow us to standardize our configuration and normalization rules. Maybe use terminology that's come from our end users, and we can feed that into our CI relationship structure. And finally, it can help us start to become either reactionary, so an issue starting to occur, we understand that it's coming in, we can correlate that back to an event that's happening, and therefore we can call some automation. Or maybe we can see that constant issues are occurring, so we're going to put something proactively to manage that moving forward. And we can use that during the ITSM logging and also during the resolution phase. So hopefully you found some useful things from today's presentation, whether it was around the planning, around the principles, the dimensions, or leveraging AI to help. But thank you very much for listening today. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation, and please contact us if you'd either like a copy or you would like further information. Thank you very much.